It's now my pleasure to go to President Ghani of Afghanistan. Mr. President, so good to see you. We know that even before this pandemic, things were challenging in your country. And I would like to just know how you're really coping with this pandemic. Do you see the support needed? And how can we get out of this health crisis in a stronger way, and what policies need to change?
Mr. President, thank you for having me, and it's a pleasure to share a platform digitally with the Deputy Secretary General, whom we had great conversation with last year. The first thing is that COVID is a hyper event. It marks a distinction between the past, the present, and the future. Second, it combines with 4 other events that are equally global trends: the 4th Industrial Revolution, the climate change, inequality, and the 5th wave of terrorism. In combination, what it presents is that there can be no longer any assumptions of stability. We have to take turmoil as the condition, the context within which we operate. Turmoil leads to uncertainty and to risk. So what's the guideline? The guidelines are people's expectations in public discourse at the local level, national level, and global level. On COVID, we've been very lucky. First cases occurred in February. We took very strong measures, thanks in part to the warning and advance notice that we had received from the Emirates. The only country that I know that that predicted the likely scenario was Sheikh Tanoon of the Abu Dhabi. As a result of that, we mobilized. Officially, our total deaths are 1,446. Unofficially, probably it's another 7,000. But Afghanistan is probably a case of collective immunity. And in that regard, we predicted a 5-phase unfolding. Unfortunately, we are in the descending phase. The challenge now is whether this trend will stay during winter or not. The impact has been severe because urban economy came to a standstill. So we go from projected 3.5% growth to minus 5%, revenue loss of 33%. Small and medium enterprises, very hard hit, particularly the informal sector, where millions of people were making a livelihood from daily life. Poverty exacerbated in 2 respects. One is structural poverty, those that were already in vulnerable positions, but the second is it produced situational poverty. People were able to work because of lockdowns. People's expectations very early on. I produced the first paper, comprehensive paper and program of action in April. First, relief, second, recovery. We changed all our budgetary practices. Everything that we've funded is come from, 90% of it has come from reallocation. International agencies associated with the UN have been totally marginal. They've still not delivered a single laboratory for testing. But it is what it is. Collectively, what I would say is that the Afghan private sector has done a miracle. Supply chains, value chains were not disrupted. The rise in food prices is less than double digit, so it's still in low numbers. Agriculture has been good, industry has been hit, but the second issue for us has really been regional connectivity. Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan were absolutely central, that Central Asia kept its borders open to us, and then Iran was extremely important. The other part of this is that we live at the heart of Asia, so we live within an open system. Vulnerability, in February to March, 15,000 on average refugees were returning a day, fleeing from the perception of heavy COVID-19 in Iran. We've managed to deal with this. Now, the task is multidimensional. Meanwhile, we had to cope with incredible violence since February 29th, when Taliban and the United States signed the agreement. We've lost over 7,000 around casualties and fatalities of security forces, now 4,000 civilians. But we got to the peace table, which is important. Now, in terms of, so I can go on, but I will not. The main thing is that COVID has brought closer trust between the government and the people. We tackled first those who were directly exposed, by the first time in our history providing baked bread during the month of Ramadan to all our urban citizens. Now we have launched a program called the National Meal, 4.5 million family households, which will come essentially to constitute 90% of the population of Afghanistan will be covered by this program. I'm delighted that 50% of the community councils that will administer this program are women. The vulnerability of female-headed households, girls, and women is especially important because we have to deal with the silver lining. We signed a memorandum of understanding with Fortescue, the largest metal company in Australia, for producing 20,000 megawatts of power from hydro, and using this to produce green industry, green energy for production. If this vision is realized, Afghanistan would have had the type of opportunity for leapfrogging, the way Singapore had it in the 1960s, the way South Korea had it in the 1970s, and other countries. So what measures do we propose? I'd like to briefly highlight 7 things. 1, partnerships. If we could have 10 companies to work with us on renewable energy and on 1 trillion mining work, it will be transformative. Aid at this moment needs changing, but it's a palliative, and people are going to compete. Second is regional connectivity. Afghanistan is at the heart of Asia. It missed the transport revolution and the subsequent revolutions. To deal with connectivity essentially is going to be transformative in the Asian story. Third is environment. We are the 17th most vulnerable country on earth, but simultaneously the source for water for nearly all our neighbors. And dealing with water resources, sun and wind, it becomes an incredibly important. The other thing is the role of business in value chains and supply chains. Our pine nuts alone, till 4 years ago, we didn't know we were one of the largest producers. Now it's a potential of $1 billion a year. And in terms of both environment, women-centered development, youth-centered development, and poor empowerment, it's crucial to think through not the recipes of the past. Here, I think the fundamental change is that the role of the state can no longer be ignored. I think that we should say a prayer for the Washington Consensus and forge a new understanding of global development. Governance should not be suspect. It is essential that parallel systems to the systems of government in the poorest countries, whether it's non-governmental organization, whether UN agencies or others, are brought within a coherent fold. Efficiency, accountability is a must. Lastly, peace, and then reshaping the aid agenda. So that's, I think, we have an opportunity to reshape our world. And Afghanistan could be a case study for this.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. We also have His Excellency the President of Costa Rica waiting, but I have one question, and if I can get also a short answer to it. I know it's extremely complex, as you said, President Ghani. On top of this, with the pandemic, but also all the poverty challenges that Afghanistan is fighting, you have had a very tough season when it comes to fighting. 7,000 security personnel has been killed, 4,000 or 5,000 civilians. How are you hopeful that there will be a constructive outcome of the peace negotiations taking place in Doha now, and without compromising on the rights for women and others in your country? If you can,
Sure.
1-2 minutes, and then I'll
Of
go
course.
to the President in Kosovo.
The figures I give you are both killed and wounded, so just a correction, not killed. Second, yes, we need a political solution to the conflict. The promise of the UN Charter and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights is our tragedy. Half of the world was made secure, the other half has been in conflict. So we need to try. I'm hopeful we will. Now it's not a discussion between Taliban and Americans, it's a discussion between the Afghan government and the Taliban. We will take measure of each other and we will arrive hopefully at a common understanding. But patience is absolutely essential. Meanwhile, the multidimensional work of governing has to go on. We cannot think unidimensionally just because we are engaging in peace. We can stop dealing with poverty or SDGs or empowerment of the women. The more facts we create on the ground, the more peace will become possible.
Thank you so much, and thank you also for your leadership.